they are just absolutely despicable. He needs to be formally reprimanded. We will make sure that voters remember this.
Vance Bolter, the suspect in the shootings of two Democratic politicians and their spouses in Minnesota, has been apprehended. The tragic shootings, in which one politician and her spouse were killed and another couple injured, have added new sharpness to the debate over toxic rhetoric. It's also caused controversy of its own after Utah Senator Mike Lee, a Republican, sent two tweets that have created a firestorm. In one, Lee tweeted a photo of the suspect and said, "This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way." Another, apparently alluding to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, said, "Nightmare on Wall Street." Bowler is not a Marxist, and the tweet about Walz seems to allude to a far-right conspiracy theory. Those tweets have received a lot of criticism, including from my guest today, Caroline Glick. Caroline was the Democratic nominee for Senate last year in Utah, running against Republican Senator John Curtis. Welcome, Caroline. What did you think of what Senator Lee did and said in this matter?
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to the families of Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, because this is a tragic act of political violence, and especially on Father's Day, with two orphaned children, my heart just breaks for that family and for everybody affected by this horrific act of violence. And as far as those tweets go, they are just absolutely despicable, especially from a senior U.S. senator. He's out here stoking the flames of violence instead of condemning it. And it's just utterly shameful and despicable. It doesn't represent who we are as Utahns, and voters will remember this.
And what do you think should be done about it? There has been some suggestion from some people about censuring Senator Lee. There have been some people certainly calling for his resignation. You seem to allude to the idea that voters might render their own verdict. But he's not up for re-election, to my knowledge, until 2028. So what do you think should be done here?
He needs to be formally reprimanded by, sitting U.S. senators and by Congress. That's absolutely what needs to happen. And yeah, it is a long way away until he's up for re-election, but we will make sure that voters remember this.
Do you yourself intend to run against him, or is it too early to make those decisions?
This kind of political advocacy and issues-based advocacy, advocating for a better Utah in America, has always been part of who I am. And I will continue to be advocating for democratic values like free speech, climate action, clean air, an economy that works for all, whether that is as an activist or, again, as a political candidate.
Do you think Senator Lee should resign?
I definitely think he should think about it and take a hard look in the mirror. It is just absolutely toxic. And I think it's really, I felt this really personally to me because when I was a candidate on the campaign trail, I felt like I was constantly looking over my shoulder. And I'm deeply aware of these kind of threats. But no one should have to fear for their life when they're running for office. And this kind of violent rhetoric, it just opens the door to all sorts of future attacks. And it also, it implies progressives are violent. So it justifies political violence, and instead of condemning it, it victim blames.
One of the counters one frequently hears from conservatives is the idea that there is a great deal of outrage in circumstances like this where the suspect appears to be right-leaning, but then they allude to, well, obviously there was an assassination attempt, one particularly close assassination attempt of President Trump. There have been other attempts from people apparently of a leftist view, the shooting at a congressional softball practice. There's someone who was charged with attempting to murder Brett Kavanaugh at the Supreme Court. So what do you say to those who would argue that this is a problem of toxic rhetoric that crosses partisan lines?
We need to stand firm in condemning this kind of political violence, no matter who it's coming from. And this is not a right or a left issue. This is an American issue because in one of the hallmarks of America is that we can criticize the government without fear of repercussion or violence. And when that stops being true, it has a chilling effect on free speech. So we need leaders from all spectrums of political backgrounds to come forward and condemn violence and extremism.
Whatever its ideological motivation.
Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned just now that when you were running for Senate, you felt a degree of unease yourself. How worried are you about the general atmosphere that we're in right now in the US in terms of the political toxicity that we're referring to? And just tell me a little bit about whatever personal fears you had.
Yeah, I mean, when a Democratic lawmaker is murdered in cold blood at her home, it really sends a shockwave to anybody who's thinking about running for office or is currently elected. And no one should have to fear for their life when they serve the public or when they're doing their job. Especially being a woman, though, I think you face sort of a double, the threat feels magnified. And I hope that we can find a path forward in America where people can run and speak freely without fear of this kind of violence. And despite that overwhelming fear and the threats, I kept showing up, and it takes a lot of bravery and courage for people to do that. And so I just wanted to also show my utmost respect to our elected lawmakers, people that are continuing to run despite these real risks that are out there.
Caroline Gleick, thanks for joining us at The Hill.
Thanks so much for having me.